Inside the horrifying crimes of Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper, one of history's most infamous serial killers. A shadowy figure who terrorized the streets of London, leaving behind gruesome crime scenes and a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Who was he? Why did he kill? And how did he vanish without a trace? The year was 1888, and the streets of Whitechapel, London were filled with poverty, crime, and desperation. The area was known for its overcrowded slums, dimly lit alleys, and a growing population of struggling women who often turned to prostitution to survive. It was in this dark and dangerous environment that Jack the Ripper began his reign of terror. During this time, the police were ill-equipped to handle violent crime, and forensic science was almost non-existent. Criminals thrived in the shadows, and when the first murder was discovered, no one could have predicted the horror that would follow. On the morning of August 31, 1888, a woman named Mary and Polly Nichols was found dead in Bucks Row. She had been brutally attacked, her throat was slashed deeply, and her body had been mutilated in a way that suggested her killer took pleasure in the violence. At first, the police treated it as just another murder in a rough neighborhood. But when a second body appeared just days later, it became clear, a serial killer was stalking the streets of London. The second victim, Annie Chapman, was found on September 8, 1888, her body left in an even more horrific state than Polly Nichols. Her throat was cut, her body was disemboweled, and part of her organs were removed, suggesting the killer had anatomical knowledge. Panic spread through Whitechapel. The newspapers gave him a name, Jack the Ripper. The murders continued with Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes on September 30, 1888, a night known as the double event because two victims were killed just minutes apart. The final confirmed victim, Mary Jane Kelly, was discovered on November 9, 1888. Unlike the others, she was killed indoors, and her body was so brutally mutilated that even the most hardened investigators were shaken. Each of the Ripper's victims were women working as prostitutes, killed swiftly and with surgical precision. The public feared that anyone could be next. As the murders continued, letters began arriving at police stations and newspapers, supposedly from the killer himself. One, titled the Dear Boss letter, was signed Jack the Ripper, a name that would forever be linked to the case. Another, known as the Saucy Jackie postcard, hinted at the double event murders before they were even made public. The most disturbing was the From Hell letter, which came with a small piece of a human kidney, allegedly from one of the victims. Whether these letters were from the real Ripper or just a hoax remains debated, but they added to the growing hysteria. The police launched one of the largest manhunts in history, questioning thousands and following countless leads. Suspects ranged from doctors and butchers to wealthy aristocrats. One of the most infamous theories suggested that the Ripper was a member of the British royal family, leading to speculation that there was a cover-up. Others believed he was a surgeon, given the precise way he mutilated his victims. Despite the enormous efforts, Jack the Ripper was never caught. Over the years, many suspects have been suggested. Montague John Druitt, a well-educated barrister who died shortly after the last Ripper murder. Some believe he was suffering from mental illness. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish barber who was placed in an asylum after the murders. DNA evidence in recent years has linked him to the crime scene, but experts still debate the validity. Dr. Francis Tumblety, a quack doctor with a history of mistreating women and a suspicious connection to the police. Walter Sickert, a famous painter whose artwork depicted women eerily similar to the Ripper's victims. Yet, no one has ever been definitively proven to be Jack the Ripper. After Mary Jane Kelly's brutal murder, the killings suddenly stopped. Some believe the Ripper died, was imprisoned for another crime, or fled the country. The Whitechapel murders left a city scarred, and to this day, historians, detectives, and true crime enthusiasts continue to investigate. More than 130 years later, the identity of Jack the Ripper remains one of the greatest mysteries in criminal history. His gruesome crimes changed the way we investigate serial killings, introduced the idea of forensic profiling, and left behind a dark legend that still fascinates the world. Who was Jack the Ripper? Why did he kill? And why did he stop? The truth may never be known.